we got about 2 minutes till 7, so I'll wait till we hit 7 and then we'll start. (2022) for the matter of case file LU 2021-023 SUB Cedar Creek Gardens. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the city's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing tonight. Apologize for the mask. I have a family member who has pending surgery. I don't want to screw that up. So just taking precautions. Anyway, sorry, I threw that in and now I've lost my train of thought. I started by saying I'm not a city employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the city council. I say that so you know you're getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me tonight. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct the hearing and make decisions about certain land use matters in the city of Sherwood. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the city's existing laws. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with City Council and Planning Commission to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As the hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker. I believe I am unbiased with regard to this application. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But you have the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I will start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which may be available at the back of the room. I know they are available online. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. Then if anybody else wants to testify in support of the application, they may do so. And then anybody who wants to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns. That should cover everybody that wants to say something about this application. You'll fall into one of those categories. Once everyone has had an initial opportunity to testify, I will give staff and the applicant the opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If that response includes any new evidence, I will give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I will close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. So public has one opportunity to testify. There is no opportunity for public rebuttal of the applicant's rebuttal. Anyone with an interest in this application might offer relevant oral or written testimony, but your testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria which are set out in the staff report. Also, please don't repeat testimony offered by yourself or earlier witnesses. I take good notes. I can review the recording of the hearing if I missed anything. General public support or general public opposition to this application are not relevant. It's not a popularity contest. Whether everybody loves it or hates it isn't an issue I get to consider. The only issue I can consider is whether it does or does not comply with the applicable approval criteria. Also, it's important that you make your best case to me. My decisions are subject to appeal to the Planning Commission. However, the commission may decide the appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. If you feel you need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open or continue the hearing for any other purpose, you must make that request before the close of the hearing tonight. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me. If the applicant wants to object to conditions of approval on constitutional grounds, they must raise those issues before me as well. Also, actually, the city's final decision, so including any appeal to city council, must occur within 120 days after this application was filed. So there's some limit to how long I can continue the hearing or hold the record open. If you want to testify and you're here in person, you need to fill out a blue form on the table back there, hand it to staff. I'll take testimony from that pile of papers. People who are appearing online have already signed up. I have 3 people signed up. There we go. Renee Mangus, Kelsey Whitber, and Don Merthaler. I hope I'm pronouncing those right. I will take testimony from the online persons as well after we're done with in-person testimony. This is one of our first. This is my first hybrid hearing here, so let's see if I missed anything. When you testify, please come on up to the table here unless you're online. Make sure the microphones are on. Right now they're red, so when first person that gets up there, if you push the button or hold it down, it'll turn green, then we'll be able to hear you. But that's part of our record in the event of an appeal. Please begin your testimony by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. If you're online, I will announce your name, ask you if you may need to unmute yourself. I think staff will unmute you as well. But if you're on the phone, did we find out if it's *9? I think it's *9 to unmute anybody who's online. If you're on a phone, it looks like everybody is. But we'll confirm that. And staff may need to unmute you as well. I think that concludes my introduction. I'm sure it does. So we'll begin the hearing as soon as Mr. Rutledge gets back. As soon as we get a confirmation on this online or the telephone. Thank you.
Are we ready for the staff presentation?
Yes. Sorry, didn't see you come back.
Sorry.
Did you check? Were you able to confirm if it's *9?
All right.
Okay. Okay. When we get to that point, we'll confirm. Thanks.
And then I don't think there's an issue with anyone participating on Zoom, but if you are
Thank you.
watching it on YouTube and you're hoping to join on Zoom, I guess maybe send me an email. I should get it to my phone here. Just want to make sure there's no issues with the Zoom. But yeah, maybe have our IT check into that as well in the meantime. All right, good evening, Mr. Turner, members of the public, applicant team. My name is Eric Rutledge, Associate Planner here at the City of Sherwood. I'm happy to be given the staff presentation for LU 2020-1023, Cedar Creek Gardens. This is for a 41-lot subdivision. Applicant is Westwood Homes. Again, the proposal is for a 41-lot, single-family detached residential subdivision. The zoning on the property is medium density residential low within the Brookman Addition concept plan area, and this is subject to the city's type 3 land use procedures. Any appeal of this decision would go to Planning Commission. And for members of the public, people online, all of the application materials are available at that link at the bottom. We have received additional testimony since release of the staff report that's summarized here, and I think we're even going to add to it here with the in-person written testimony submittals. So exhibits C5 through C9 were received after release of the staff report, but before this hearing. So we want to get those into the record. There is a copy back here if anyone wants to review that. It's a few hundred pages. And it looks like we'll get, is this one additional piece of testimony, at least for now, we'll call it C10, from Madeline Robinette. Title is Culturally Modified Trees. So we'll add that C10 as well. And then we have some staff report revisions. Page 3, east should be west.
Let me catch up with you. Do you have that in writing, so I don't have to?
I can send you this PowerPoint.
Okay, great.
Yep. Lot 23, and this is a little bit of a substance one. The staff finding was that there was not 25 feet of frontage. It was just an issue with the labels on the plat. It does actually have 25 feet of frontage. And then a little bit of substance here as well. Page 71 and 93. Page 93 says that the city has approved all of the design exceptions requested from the applicant. Page 71 says only 2 out of the 3 have been approved, and the first is correct. Page 71 is correct. Only 2 out of 3 of the design exceptions have been approved by the city. So just want to clarify, page 93 is incorrect, where it says all 3. And those design exceptions are in the record, the approved ones. Notice of this application was routed to affected agencies on June 13th. All the agency comments have been incorporated into the findings and conditions of the staff report. Mailed notice was provided, public notice was provided in accordance with city code that includes mailed notice to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site. Signage posted on the site. Signage posted in a few different locations throughout the city, and then also posted in a newspaper of general circulation. We did this notice twice just to ensure that this hearing was properly noticed. And to date, we've received, I guess it'd be 10 now, public comments on the application. Looks like we have a lot of people here for verbal testimony as well. To summarize the public comments, sort of the main threads of the public comments, first was concern around tree removal and preservation. Second was the access location and design for the driveway for lots 40 and 41. And then construction disturbances. Those are the main threads. There was a lot of other issues raised, but nothing that really permeated in terms of trends within the public comments, except for these. As Mr. Turner mentioned, a decision and the staff report has to be based on the approval criteria and the development code. So just for reference, here is the development code sections that apply. We do hope the testimony relates to approval criteria. It's okay if it doesn't, but you'll be most effective if the testimony relates to one or more of these criteria to actually be applied. Getting into the details of the site. So the site's outlined here in red. It's at the eastern end of the Brookman concept plan area. So these two lots highlighted in red. The purple line here is the existing city boundary, and then the green line is the urban growth boundary. So all of this area here in purple, including these lots, have been annexed and are in the city of Sherwood. This property just to the east is outside of city limits, but inside the urban growth boundary. Yeah, leave it there. The existing conditions, as you can see, heavily forested site. Cedar Creek runs through the property as well, south to north. So I see the change in the vegetation color here. Can we turn these lights off, just like last time? A little bit better. Can we get the other ones? Joe will be in the dark up there.
That's okay.
All right.
I think, yeah, I got plenty of light from my screen. I'm fine.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, seems to
So
be
again,
much better.
forested site, and then we have the Cedar Creek and two different tributaries running through the property here, north to south. So yeah, you can kind of see the creek with the change in the vegetation color here. And then in terms of just the background, many people probably know this, but the site was within the Brookman Addition Concept Plan area, so roughly this area here, let's get this thing, laser pointer, roughly this area here is where the site is. So all of this colored area that you've seen has been brought into the city's urban growth boundary, and it is anticipated that these areas will be developed in the near future, at least the 20-year horizon, with the zoning that's shown, concept zoning that's shown here. So residential mainly towards the east end, and then mixed use commercial residential here, and then industrial along Highway 99. So again, this whole area within the urban growth boundary, and what we've been seeing is annexations mainly here in the center and the eastern area, with the residential portion of the Brookman area developing first, and we anticipate it will continue east and west eventually till we get to this commercial and industrial area. So yeah, that's plenty of background. I apologize for this sort of patchwork of different plats, but this is just to show what the city has approved already in terms of land use subdivisions, and then the areas that have not had approval. So the site outlined here in red, you can see the plat that they are proposing, including the Cedar Creek and its tributaries shown here. And then all of these others have already been approved and are either under construction or will begin construction soon. So we have the Middlebrook plat, that's 145 lots approved and under construction. Some of those homes, many of the homes are going up now. Moving to the east is this one here is down here, Riverside at Cedar Creek, 28 lots, preliminary plat approved and will begin construction soon. And then we have the Reserve at Cedar Creek, 59 lots, preliminary approval received and under construction as well. And so this would be the first development really on the east side of the main Cedar Creek tributary. I wanted to show this just to kind of show the rest of the development that's already been approved to the east, kind of show the network of trails. That'd be the light green, probably hard to see in this one, but the trail system that sort of goes throughout, and this proposed subdivision will also tie into it. Here there'll be a crossing of Cedar Creek here, already a crossing established up to the north, and that will get you into the rest of this neighborhood. So this proposal would build off the previously approved subdivisions. To the south, this is area on the other side of Brookman Road. This is area that is outside the urban growth boundary, so not likely to be developed within the next 20 years. City would have to do more planning before that area could be annexed into the city. This area here, these properties are within the city, are within the urban growth boundary, but outside city limits. And so, no plat overlay here because there's no approval for them at this point. That's the surrounding land uses, and then of course to the north, existing residential subdivisions, including the Cedar Creek corridor that runs through the existing subdivisions. Zoning on the property, again, is medium density residential low. This zoning allows 5.6 to 8 dwelling units per acre. The applicant is proposing single-family lots at a density of 6.13 units per acre. And then the development standards, all the development standards for the underlying zone shown here on the left. The applicant has requested a 10% reduction to both the minimum lot area and the lot width at building line. That reduction is permitted under 16.144.030B1. The way this works is for every square foot of lot area reduction, the applicant's required to preserve upland, regionally significant habitat. In this case, it'd be upland habitat, tree canopy cover at a 1-to-1 ratio for the reduction of lot area. And then the preliminary plat overview. So kind of an odd-shaped plat, it's running north to south. but sort of 3 different areas of development. The first and the largest one would be off of Brookman Road. Brookman Road's an arterial under county jurisdiction. We have a new local street here, which would serve most of the lots through a new public street system. This would be continued on the property to the east and eventually come back down for another new intersection with Brookman Road while avoiding this tributary here. So it'd come back down, and we did look at the access spacing between these two to make sure that when this comes back down, it would meet the county's access spacing standards. So one area of development here. The second area is located at the northeast end of the site. This would be built off of the reserve at Cedar Creek approval, so half or 3/4 of the road will already be constructed. This applicant would just finish this portion and add, I believe it's 8 lots in this area here. And then the final area of development would be off Brookman Road as well, as it makes the turn toward Lad Hill Road. This would be served by a private driveway as opposed to public streets. It would serve 2 lots and then an open space tract here in the back. Red Fern Lane comes down here. I would guess most of the people in the audience are probably from this neighborhood here or this other one here. So I just want to clarify that there's no vehicle access proposed to the subdivision from Red Fern. There is a trail proposed that would run along the backside, or they would continue the trail that exists on the backside of the homes here. It would continue to the property line here, so it could be extended in the future when this property to the south develops. Yeah, I have another slide that will zoom in on this one as well. Here we go. So lots 40 and 41, most of the testimony was around tree removal and access for these, so I just wanted to spend a little bit more time on this. So again, Brookman Road here, driveway serving the site. This would be a private driveway to serve 2 lots. There is a wetland right here, and so it's the main reason why this driveway is at the width that it is to preserve as much of this wetland as possible and provide an open space tract, mainly passive open space tract here. You'd get to the 2 lots and then an open space tract I here at the end. So the residents here of this neighborhood would have access to this new open space tract. It would be required to be available to the public. So open space here at the end. Yeah, leave it there. And then in terms of the parks, trees, and open space standards in the city's code, this is addressed under 16.142. Open space is kind of dually governed by the city and Clean Water Services, among others, the state of Oregon. But the current proposal is for, and it required, that wetland, floodplain, and the buffers around those areas as determined by Clean Water Services be protected. If it's proposed to be removed, they would need to mitigate for it or get approval for that removal. But Cedar Creek, the sort of the main area of Cedar Creek, and any wetlands within Cedar Creek and its buffers would be preserved with some exceptions for trails, driveways, other improvements, but the sort of main course of the creek and the sensitive habitat will be preserved. In other words, the subdivision has been designed to minimize impact to the natural areas. And by that, I mean mainly associated with water, not necessarily trees. And goes into more, actually I'll go back to this one, a few other comments. The developer would be required to and is conditioned to provide new street trees, and they also have to provide community trail. They're proposing a community trail extension, not only here, but also, like I mentioned, on the backside of these lots, and that would work off of the existing trail system in each of the surrounding neighborhoods. And this is just a snip of the Clean Water Services map that they provided. So this kind of shows the impacts to the areas. So yellow and blue would be permanent impacts. So you can kind of see the different areas mainly associated with roads and crossings, pedestrian crossings of the creek where there would be impacts. Yeah, the rest of this will be protected through site development. And then in terms of tree removal, these are just two snapshots of the two different tree removal plans that have been submitted. So the area in the south and the area in the north. And I'll get into more detail on this. I think, a lot of the testimony so far has been around tree code and tree preservation. So I just want to go over that in a little bit more detail here. So tree preservation is addressed in 16.142. And basically what that standard says is that in terms of retention requirements, trees may be considered for removal to accommodate the development, including buildings, parking, walkways, grading, etc., provided the development satisfies D3 below. And you go to D3, and D3 requires the net development site to achieve a minimum canopy of 30%. We should check on this to make sure it's not 40%, but it's either 30 or 40. I can clarify at the end of the presentation. Do you want to look at that, Eric? I just want to make sure there's not a typo here. For some reason, I'm thinking it's 40. It's either 30 or 40%. So basically, the trees can be removed as long as a new tree canopy is established at, and if it's this 3 is 30%, number 2 is 40%, so we'll clarify whether it's 30 or 40. But basically, trees can be removed as long as the trees are planted at a percentage that meets the code, either 30 or 40%. So that's the first part of the tree code.
Retained trees can meet that too, can't they?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't, if they
So-
retain 30%, then they don't have to plant anything, or 40%, whatever the cut.
Correct, unless it would be required elsewhere in the code.
Right.
Street trees.
Yeah.
So we'll clarify 30 or 40%. And then we do have a section that follows this that talks about, regardless of D1 through D3, certain trees or woodlands may be required to be retained. And the criteria for retaining this is that it's both feasible and practical within the context of the land use plan and relative to other policies and standards of the comprehensive plan, and meet one of these A through E below. So first, that that the tree protection is both feasible and practical within the context of the proposed land use plan, and that it checks one of these boxes down here. Staff is taking a close look at all of these criteria. We do not believe that the trees on the site trigger any of these criteria. The exception would potentially be E. So just want to go through these, the trees that are in the natural area, floodplain, greenway, et cetera, those are required to be protected already. The applicant's doing that, unless there's an issue with either the trail, some type of clear construction issue, but that's going to be very minimal. Concerns about erosion, erosion, disease, other natural processes, soil stability, and then buffers between incompatible land uses. So we've taken a look at all of these. The arborist report also has provided background on the tree canopy and conditions, and the staff finding recommendation on this to the hearings officer is that A through D have not been triggered with this site and the conditions. E states that the trees otherwise merit retention because of unusual size of the tree stand, historic association, species type, habitat or wildlife preservation considerations, or some combination thereof as determined by the city. I think this code section could potentially apply to the trees on this site. Staff, and this is not in the staff report, but we're bringing up this point now, that this standard could, and staff does believe it is an issue with the state requirements that housing standards be clear and objective. We don't, and just to clarify for the audience what that is that the state has required any standard, either that we adopt, new standard that we adopt, or that we apply, an existing standard that we apply to be both clear and objective. And if it's not clear and objective, it can't be applied. And the reason for that is because we're in a housing shortage, and the state would like to provide applicants and really the public and everybody a clear path forward for housing when they come forward. And so if the code, when the applicant really gets into the development, is not clear and objective, it's open to discretion, that cannot be applied because it would just be an issue with that law as it relates to trying to get as much needed housing approved and constructed as possible in the state of Oregon. And so we see the standard as not providing a clear and objective path for protection. And like you mentioned in your introduction, if the laws in effect need to be changed, that is with City Council. And so difference between the rules that we have on the books and what we're aiming for. Yeah, again, just to get into the detail, unusual size, just not clear what that actually is. Size of the tree stand. Again, I think with all of these, we don't really have like a definition of what unusual size is. Definition of what merits retention based on the size of the tree stand. Historic association for who? Species type, habitat or wildlife preservation considerations, vague, or some combination thereof as determined by the city. And so while I think this was a very well-intended code section, and generally, I agree with preserving trees, we can only apply standards that are clear and objective. And if we don't, we would have an issue with the state on an appeal. And so because of that, staff is not recommending approval based on subsection E. And I do just want to clarify, because I've seen it in the testimony, that we do have a standard that talks about what a large stature tree is, and that's defined, but it does not tie itself to this standard of unusual size or size of the tree stand. And so unfortunately, we just don't have a way to require protection that would have been clear and objective to the applicant when they came in based on this code section. And because of that, staff's not recommending approval, required approval of trees based on any of these standards. And so the staff report addresses, and the tree report addresses which trees are proposed to be preserved. 40%, thank you, and I'm going to go back to this. This is a typo, I thought it might be. So it's actually a 40% tree canopy that needs to be obtained by the applicant. So again, that could be obtained through new plantings or through preservation of existing trees to get to the 40% canopy. And regardless of sort of this issue with the clear and objective standards around tree protection, staff has identified 7 additional trees on the site that we are requesting the applicant to voluntarily preserve in addition to the trees that they are indicating for preservation now. So these are all highlighted in red. And they're identified here. So what we've asked the applicant to do, and it looks like they may have submitted something in writing here tonight, we've asked the applicant to respond to each one of these trees individually about whether or not they can be preserved. Again, they've indicated them for removal. Staff has identified them as potentially being able to be preserved based on their location. And staff only identified trees under this section here that are Douglas firs, large Douglas firs in fair or good condition. If the tree was in poor condition, if it was dead, if it was a nuisance species, etc., staff did not identify that for protection. So again, trees that were Douglas fir in good or fair condition and in locations that we thought could potentially be saved based on the location relative to the development. And so we'd be looking for a response from the applicant on that. And then and again, this would be voluntary. In my take on the code is that staff does not have and the city does not have the ability to require protection of those trees. But if the applicant can voluntarily do it, that would be what we'd be looking for. And then we received testimony. This mainly came in after release of the staff report. There are there were a number of trees that were identified as potentially being off-site or on the property line. Staff has looked at those, and the ones that we kind of clearly agree with would be these ones here. One of them was outlined here in blue, 8339. These other two, 6602 and 03, we've already actually picked up on. Those are these two right here. So that's sort of the detail of the tree preservation and removal staff findings for this area. And then transportation, again, 3 different areas that the site will be accessed from, one Brookman, one from the approved subdivisions, and then another one from Brookman via a private driveway. The applicant is conditioned to obtain final approval from Washington County for all of these access points, this one and this one, because this is an arterial road. Any local street connection has to get a design exception. They're looking for larger roads to connect to their arterial, and these are all local roads. So they need an exception to actually bring it down to a local road. So they're conditioned to get these design exceptions. They also need a design exception for the left turn into this driveway. It does not meet the county's site distance standards. As you make this left turn into this driveway, there's a pretty sharp curve right here, and so the vehicles turning left wouldn't be able to see the oncoming vehicles this way, and so they do need a design exception from the county for that turn movement as well. The county's provided comment on this application and indicated that they've reviewed all of the requests. They don't see any issues with approving all 3 design exceptions, but they have not formally approved those at this point. In terms of the rest of the transportation, the applicant, of course, would be responsible for building out the public road system and private driveways to serve their site. And with that, the staff recommendation is for approval of LU 2021-023, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report. And I would just add with the modifications outlined during the presentation. And that concludes the staff presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions. Can you make your PowerPoint an exhibit and send me a copy?
Yes.
Okay, I've got some easy access to those maps there. Where are we with the 120-day clock?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll need to look at that.
Okay. I see the recent exhibits are marked as exhibit numbers. I appreciate that. I don't think the ones you emailed me today had exhibits on them. Can you send me electronic copies with exhibit numbers just so I can track it easier? Some of these you hit in your summary here. On page 30 of the staff report, it notes a trail crossing of Cedar Creek is not proposed for the northern portion of the site due to the length of the crossing and high cost of construction. I understand that. But if you say the applicant has provided a 20-foot trail easement for future crossing at this location, where's that easement? I didn't see anything on any of the plans about that.
I've definitely seen it. It should be on the plat, but if it's
Can you tell
not,
me roughly where it's located?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Just generally speaking, let me get.
Yeah. I'm sure it's out there in one of those plans. When
So
I
it'd be-
saw that issue, I couldn't find it on the plan later.
Yeah, maybe it'd be this crossing here, the very northern. So
I don't see your
Sorry,
pointer.
should be this area. Here.
Okay. So there's no north-south connection, pedestrian connection.
Did I say
I guess,
north-south? It'd be an east-west connection across
Right.
the creek. So that may be another typo. North-south, east-west.
I don't think there was a,
Now, did we
you
say-
did fix the east-west connection, east-west issue. I flagged that one too.
Okay.
The school district wanted to make sure there was pedestrian access from the southern portion of this site to the Redfern, and it looks like the property to the east plan is for them to provide that because basically a north-south connection. So that answers my question, and hopefully the school district's question.
Yeah, in speaking with the school district, it was this area here. It was this area here that they were interested. I think they have, and really what that was trying to, it's anticipated the elementary school that serves would be just one that's kind of just north of this neighborhood here. So the superintendent was hoping to clarify that that when this builds out here, these school students can get
They can walk to school.
Can't get across the creek, basically,
Sure.
and get to
Okay.
school to the north, yes.
Page 105 and condition C8 on page 120. I had a question which I didn't write down, so let me track it down. Minor typo, I think. Oh, yeah, condition 8 on page 120. It says, prior to final approval of engineering plans, the subject development shall design. I think that's supposed to say shall be designed to provide. Oh. They want to clarify that is correct?
I'm not sure exactly what the
Okay.
language was intended
That's okay.
for, but
I can fix it. I'm sure that's what was intended. Okay. Yep, great. Is there a maximum, I see there's a minimum lot size standard in the code, and then they can reduce 10% from that with the exception or the standard you referred to. Is there a maximum lot size in the code?
no.
No?
Nope.
Okay. I didn't think so. Wanted to check. The school district we talked about. There was a question about the width of the trails that they proposed 12 foot wide in here, but the Sherwood Transportation System plan shows 8 to 10 for feeder trails and 12 feet for primary. Is there a basis for?
So city staff would be open to a different trail design there. So I guess, I'd ask the applicant to clarify what that trail actually is proposed at. We don't apply the city standards unless the city is taking over the trail. And it's going to be this will be a public access trail, but it won't be owned and maintained by the city. It's going to be owned and maintained by the HOA of this new development. And so because of that, we wouldn't apply our own standards.
So they can propose whatever size of trail they want within.
Yeah, and we
limits.
would weigh in on that based on the location and purpose of the trail. In this case, it's I believe it's a 20-foot wide easement with a slightly smaller trail, either 15 or 12.
Okay.
Seems appropriate for this location. I know the testimony was in response to hoping to preserve some of the trees as a result of a lower or lesser width trail. I think city staff is open to that. I think it'd be on the applicant to sort of state why the trail is at that width, and if they did reduce it, would that result in tree preservation or not? I don't know if it actually would. But under the current proposal, a 20-foot wide easement with a 12 to 15-foot wide trail, I think that seems an appropriate starting point. So staff didn't have any changes for that.
Okay. One of the neighbor comments noted this. They talked about driveways and private streets. What's the difference between a driveway and a private street? I looked in the code. I couldn't find any definition of either.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on that at this point? Or?
Well, let's look at the definition of a street first. Actually, I think it's going to help.
That even includes a trail as a street, so that didn't seem to be very helpful.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad definition.
Yeah.
So, and your question is, what is the difference?
Yeah. Why are what the neighbors noted, what the applicants proposed as driveways, which are clearly part of the proposed lots rather than a tract, but why aren't they private streets based on the cited criteria?
I believe actually the staff report calls all of these out as private streets. So if we just look at, I think it's maybe just I think those comments were referring to the applicant's presentation.
If they're private streets, don't they have to have sidewalks then on both sides?
Yeah, let's get into that code then, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're moving fast, but let's get into it. So, you don't have a staff report page number, do you, that they were referring to?
No, that was more from a public comment, and I went straight to the code, so.
Yeah, hold on one sec. Let me get you there.
I know the neighbor's comment has it all. Yeah, you go ahead and look. I'll see if I can find it as well. They refer to 1696-020 for minimum residential standards for private on-site circulation improvements. And then sub A, driveways, two-family, one shared driveway. Not sure that this is the right one. Oh, sorry. It's 1606040N1 talks about private streets.
Say that again.
16040N1. Private, N is private streets. 1 says the construction of private streets for a single family is prohibited unless it provides principal access to 2 or fewer residential lots or parcels, i.e. flag lots. Then they cite to the definition of flag lot, which is a building lot which is provided access to a public street by means of a narrow strip of land with minimal frontage.
Yep. So there's 2 areas in the code that address private streets. This is the first one. So this is in the context of, this is in the public transportation.
And what section is that?
So we're in the section you referenced.
1609, or, yeah, 16106, sorry.
Yep, in, subsection in.
Yeah, and that's
Private
in what
streets.
section? What's the overall section there? Sorry, yeah, that's okay. I'll find it in the code when I get to this.
Paper's not doing
Yeah.
it for me now.
While you're looking, their comment goes on to say 161060660A required improvements. 1, except as otherwise provided, sidewalks shall be installed on both sides of a public street and in any special pedestrian way within new development. So, but that, the criteria before that they reference says private street shall comply with the same standards as a public street. So their argument is that sidewalks are required on both sides of all private streets, driveways, whatever we want to call them. And I just wanted to get your take on that.
Let's start with N. It'd be public infrastructure, transportation, 106, and then
040,
040, design.
and then N.
And private streets. Okay. So, yes, and originally the applicant was proposing 3 lots, and because of this code section here, they had to reduce it to 2.
And that would, when you say they were originally proposing 3 lots in the northeast corner of that, on that flag
Yep.
portion? Okay.
So, number 2 talks about the HOA basically, or whoever is responsible for the access and maintenance, and then getting to the standards, unless otherwise specifically authorized, a private street shall comply with the same standards as a public street identified in the community development plan. Our engineering department has reviewed the plat, and I spoke with our engineer today. It wasn't the city engineer, but just under him, Craig Christensen. He's available as well, I believe, if we need to get him on the line. He's not here, but he can weigh in via Zoom. But the city is not requiring, as part of this development, and it's not our practice really with any subdivisions where the private street is serving 2 or less lots, which is almost all the cases unless it's a planned unit development. We have not been requiring sidewalks or full development of the road, of the private street to public street standards. The reason for that is because the reason that developers and applicants use private streets is because they're more flexible than the public street standard, and so it just sort of defeats the purpose of having a private street if all of them were required to comply with the public street standards. So we look at the specific proposal, and if the engineering and planning department, if the city believes that more is needed, more than just a driveway, for example, then we would call that out and condition it. But we haven't done that here, and so the city's position is that we are specifically otherwise authorizing
Okay.
this design.
This may be
And
more.
I'll just go to one
Oh,
more
go ahead.
section
Sorry,
really
didn't mean
quickly.
to
I think it's
skip
going to be,
past that one.
yeah, the other one is public and private utilities, 16.118, and then private streets are addressed here as well. And basically the same thing. It's just in a separate standard, but it's going to say the same thing unless otherwise specifically authorized, has to comply with the public street. So same standard, different location.
Thank you. This may be more for the applicant, but there was a question about where the floodplain boundary is, noting that it appears to change, or no, it extends onto lot 7, and then, is that yeah. Maybe. It's figure 4B of the neighbor's testimony, but it's map 23. I think you had it in here. In your PowerPoint, I think, or something similar to it. Oh yeah, that one shows the hatched area there as floodplain, Cedar Creek floodplain wetlands, but the map 21A and B submitted, provided by the neighbor, show a line showing the floodplain boundary, and it appears to extend barely onto lot 7. Here, it looks like it'd be more lot 8, given the angle of the creek there. That one, there we go.
Yeah, floodplain wasn't shown there. Here we go. So it looks like it's going
Right there.
to be, yeah, so it's not on the lot, but the trail would be over the floodplain.
Okay.
Yep. But not the lot. And so just I know if there's concern about flooding with the new homes, the applicant is required to meet the floodplain standards for construction. And so there's no homes that will be built in the floodplain. They're required to maintain, a certain elevation. And then for all of these lots that are adjacent to the floodplain, we do have a condition of approval that the applicant provide a flood elevation certificate with the occupancy.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be, but the flood, and that's not uncommon to have the recreational areas impacting the natural resources.
Can you go back to the, looks like it's 3 down, the colored one, that one? So the yellow areas on that are just vegetated corridor impacts. They're not floodplain impacts. Correct?
So the yellow is...
Ms. Palmer's nodding her head yes. I just wanted to...
It's not in my head as yes. Vegetated corridor, permanent impacts. So you have the, basically what the yellow shown is you have the wetland and then the buffers coming out, and they're going to, permanently disturb and develop that. The floodplain is not shown on this one. Yeah, we just have to go back to this one. But there are, of course, impacts to, like for all of these trails that cross the creek. It's got to go over the floodplain, and so it'd be the same situation here where the trail is in the floodplain.
Okay, thank you. You addressed most of the tree questions I had, but can you tell me where Tract A of Arbor Lane subdivision is, just so I can orient myself to that? That was mentioned in one of the public comments.
Don't know.
Okay, I'll ask the public to tell me that when whoever it was that raised that issue. That. And I think you answered this, but I'll clarify just in case. Access to, there's no vehicular access from Redford into this site. Does that include, are there any utility, couldn't come up with that word for a second, any utilities in there that will require construction vehicles to go into that area to connect? Because neighbors wanted a condition prohibiting any construction vehicle access via Redfern, and afraid that such a condition could conflict with that if there are utilities there that need to be connected to.
So I know the utilities are going to come this way. I believe they are going to connect into Redfern. I'd have the applicant respond to that. I don't have the utility plan in front of me, but I believe they are going to connect into Redfern and into Brookman area here. And the city does have code around construction noise, and we do respond to complaints around construction.
But just if in order to build on lot 40 and 41, they can't come in that
Correct.
direction.
Correct. The Brookman Addition concept plan is very clear. That's an adopted concept plan. Legislative, no vehicle access from Redfern.
Right. That's what I understood.
And that's why the proposal is to come off of Brookman.
Thank you. That was the only questions I had. Mr. Hayson, I assume you're representing the applicant?
I'll have you drive. You just need to find it. Where'd it go? There you go. I'll bring it over to you.
Amazing how those cords manage to tangle themselves.
Good evening, Hearings Officer Turner and staff. My name is Wayne Hayson, last name Hayson, and my address is 9020 Southwest Washington Square Road, Suite 170, Portland, Oregon 97223. We do appreciate the time to be here tonight, and we appreciate the efforts of staff in getting us to this point. It's been a relatively long process, and we're happy to be here before you tonight to present the application. I am going to start with something a little bit different because we're doing the hybrid hearing. We have with us tonight myself and Matthew Sprague of Pioneer Design Group and Todd Prager of Todd Prager and Associates. He's the arborist on the project. We do also have members of the team who are connected via Zoom and available to respond to any questions that you might have. So just to highlight that so you're aware of who we do have, since they're not in front of you right now, we do have representatives from the applicant's attorney, the site biologist, and also the site traffic engineering staff. If needed, we can call on any of those at the appropriate time and they can introduce themselves. But for the purposes of putting it into the record, these are the people we have available. I have provided copies of the slides so that you do have those as well with the addresses and all of those. Now, I'm going to try and be reasonably brief. Staff always does an excellent job of presenting the application and the details, and we don't want to go over things too many times. But it is a request for a 41-lot single-family residential subdivision. As was mentioned, it's located on the east end of the Brookman Addition concept plan, at least that portion that's currently inside the city boundaries. It's comprised of 2 tax lots and a total of 19.99 acres as surveyed. You can see it's a little bit hard. It's an oddly shaped site, but you can see those portions which were anticipated to be open space within the original concept plan, and those portions which were originally determined to be residential development or capable of supporting residential development. The reality of the site is that a large majority of it is open space associated with the Cedar Creek corridor and its associated vegetated corridor and buffer areas. You can see there in the darker color is the streets and trails. So ultimately, when connected with the developments to the west, you'll be able to get from the end of the Hammerhead there to all the way looping around through the reserve at Cedar Creek and to the north along the rear of lots 1 through 8. So I just point out at this point that the access points, the two that we have there, the one that's in the northeast corner, the 2 home driveway access, and also the local street access on the south end are both anticipated connections that are included or generally located within those areas on the both the City of Sherwood TSP, Transportation System Plan, and the Washington County Transportation System Plan. We were required to get access permits or design exceptions for those accesses from the county, and as staff has mentioned, the county has indicated that they would be, or they are willing to approve those exceptions. They just want to do it in a coordinated approach with the full engineering plans. So we will submit those as well at the time with the engineering plans, but they have indicated that they are amenable to approval of those design exceptions. I did also want to mention just the one design modification that was not approved by the city. That was a request to eliminate the utility easement that would be located along the side of Street B where it crosses the resource. You can see between where it says Tract B open space and Tract D open space. Before you get to lots 37, 38, we were requesting approval to eliminate the utility easements along the side of Street B there and have those utilities located within the roadway. And my understanding is that we can submit that request with the engineering plans for the site, but obviously it hasn't been approved at this point. It's not fundamentally required. It just means that we are able to reduce our impact on the resource area, and we will need to revise our service provider letter if we are required to put easements along the side of Tract B to provide some additional mitigation. So I just wanted to get back to, I guess, the reason that we're here and what we're reviewing the application against, which is the Brookman Road Concept Plan. As described in the plan, the purpose of the concept plan is to provide a conceptual guide to the area's development as a new addition to Sherwood, articulating a clear and coherent vision for the area and identifying future land uses, parks, trails, natural resource areas, etc., all guided by planning efforts developed with substantial public involvement. And what we have there, the image that we have there is directly from the Brookman Road Concept Plan, and I believe it's also repeated in the refinement plan. And it shows alternative concept plans developed and evaluated at the first open house in October of 2007. And you can see the various iterations of the plan that were conceptually proposed for this site. And the top one essentially creates the entire site as open space, including, and it's difficult to see there, but including the flagpole portion out to Brookman Road, which is identified as open space in this plan. And if you look in the Brookman Road Concept Plan and the summary of public consultation that is included in that, it does talk about the various iterations that went through and the community involvement to develop the plan, which is what has resulted in the plan that we have today, which designates that flagpole portion as medium density residential low, as opposed to providing an open space designation. And that was adopted by the City Council in June of 2009 and final on April 5, 2010. So what we have here is essentially the realization of a 12, 13-year-old plan, which is, and we believe the proposal is consistent with the intent and the guidance of that plan. The Brookman Concept Plan refinement was adopted by the City Council in March of 2021 and became final on April 15, 2021. That refinement plan did not alter the designation of that area, any portion of the site, and we find ourselves here a little over a year later trying to realise the vision of that plan. There are approximately 273 units currently approved or proposed within the 4 developments that have been submitted to date. So these are the last 41 of those 273 units. And looking at the combined area of those approvals, there's an average density or an average gross density of 3.2 units per acre. The original Brookman concept plan did, as mentioned, identify Redfern Drive as an area of special concern, which was appropriate for bicycle, pedestrian and emergency access only, and that is the sole reason why we are required to access Brookman Road. There are no physical constraints that would prevent connection to Redfern, but it was determined at the time that the intersection, I believe, with Sunset Drive is wasn't sufficient to receive additional vehicle trips, and so that was the reason for that prohibition on Redfern. The only mention of Redfern during the Brookman concept plan refinement process was it's noted there that some participants had identified a potential connection to the area to the Brookman Road concept plan area using Redfern Drive. However, no changes to the plan were ultimately made. And therefore, access to the northeastern corner of the site remains limited to Brookman Road as shown in the plan and TSP. And I'll just go back here for a moment. You can see that there are connections designated approximately in the location where we have our site accesses proposed as well. So looking at the project features, and I'll mention that the rendering there on the left is, I've submitted 11 by 17 copies of that to the record, so you can see those. I think they provide a really good visual illustration of just how much open space is being provided with this development. As part of that development, just to put it into numbers, the vegetated corridor is a total of 11.34 acres of the total 19.99 acres. So 57% of the site is in vegetated corridor, while another 6% for a total of 63% of the site is preserved in open space. So that is obviously a considerable amount and a larger portion than would have been anticipated through the original plan, and a larger proportion than other sites have been required to provide, but it is designated as open space in the plan. So we do have that 63%. In addition, we have another 10% of right-of-way dedication for internal streets and dedication on Brookman Road. And so ultimately the area that's reserved for residential development within the lots only accounts for 27% of the site. Now, in a lot of jurisdictions, and typically when you're looking at a property, the proportion of the site that is utilised for development, which in this case would include the right-of-way dedication and the area contained within the lots, would typically be closer to 80%. And some jurisdictions, for example, use that 80% of the gross site area as their net site area for their density calculations. So at 37% being the lots and the right-of-way dedication, we're certainly dedicating substantially more or preserving substantially more open space than would typically be provided. We also have actually, just to mention, the 0.33 lineal miles of community trail within the site, which I believe is over 1,200 lineal feet of community trail on both sides of Cedar Creek, connecting to the approved trails within surrounding developments. And I believe that is not including the sidewalks that are provided, public sidewalks that are provided on public streets within the development. Of the 1,579 trees inventoried on site, 881 will be retained, which is 55.8% of trees, including 87 trees outside of environmentally constrained areas. To those 881 trees, we'll be adding approximately 33 street trees, 195 trees within the vegetated corridor, and 2,100 shrubs within those mitigation areas in accordance with the Clean Water Services Service Provider Letter. There will also be additional trees located within the proposed water quality facilities. And including the retained trees outside of environmentally constrained areas in the proposed street trees, the tree canopy is measured as, for the net site area, sorry, the formatting's just gone a little bit astray there, but we're at 56.8% of the net site area, which greatly exceeds the 40% requirement, and we did have an opportunity to confirm that the requirement is 40% of the site. But just to go over a little bit more in a little bit more detail, the tree plan, we do have Todd Prager here who will just talk you through what we did with the tree removal. We have made some changes based on testimony today, and Todd will be able to run through that. And I apologize, it is a oddly shaped site, and this was the best way to get it all on there for you.
North is that way?
That's correct.
Good evening, Mr. Turner. I'm Todd Prager. I'm the consulting arborist for the project. Last name is spelled Prager. Address is 601 Atwater Road, Lake Oswego, 97034. I am a board certified master arborist, registered consulting arborist. I'm also a certified land use planner. I have 20 years of experience as a consulting arborist. And I wanted to start just kind of go through, we submitted a memo to you and to staff.
Tonight?
Tonight.
Okay. I hadn't seen it. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of run through what we submitted in that memo, starting with summarizing our efforts, kind of the iterations of the plan that we went through to preserve trees at the site, and then get into the details of the trees that were brought to our attention by both city comments and then also community comments. There was several trees questioned about whether we could look at retaining them, and we did that, went through that analysis for each of the trees. So as far as the plan, originally we had a draft of the site, and I had produced a tree plan November 3rd, 2021. In that original plan, we had of the total trees on the site, 833 trees retained, 746 removed. We had a retention percentage of 52.8%, and the tree canopy outside of environmentally constrained land was a little over 48,000 square feet. We looked, they had a new design of the site. I believe maybe it was reduced some lots or a lot, revised some grading, and I reviewed that plan to look at preserving additional trees. That plan was dated May 17th, 2022, and in that proposal, we were preserving 877 trees. So we preserved 44 additional trees from that previous plan, and 55.5% of the trees at the site were retained, and 60,800 square feet of tree canopy outside the environmentally constrained lands. So Wayne mentioned that there's now 881 trees, and that is 4 additional trees as a result of the analysis of looking at these additional trees that were brought up by the city and community. So if I may, I just don't want to get too detailed, but we did want to show that we looked at every tree that was brought up by the city and community in the comments. We reviewed the tree 6602 was the first one. I'm just going in order of number. We found that we could adjust the trail, the community trail, at least 5 feet to the east and do some pavement methods to pave that trail at grade, potentially to avoid any root loss. So the combination of those factors has allowed us to retain tree 6602, and actually the same goes for 6603. So we're now proposing to retain those two trees.
And where are those ones located?
Those are just
Is that
west of the community trail.
the Redfern?
Yes, they're
Okay.
just west of Redfern. I actually believe that they're in Tract A of, or on the boundary of Tract A of Arbor Lane.
Yeah, so they're property line trees, I believe, both of them. We also, and I'm going through the city requested trees to look at first. We looked at 8202 and 8211. Both of those were in the building envelope for lot 41. So we didn't, we're still proposing to remove those because they're in the building envelope. Tree 8212 is 4 feet from the building envelope, and based on the excavation for the foundation, requirement to, for forms, et cetera, I'm not recommending preservation of that tree based on its close proximity to the building envelope on lot 41. That's tree 8212. 8271 is within the grading footprint on lot 41. So there's going to be grading, even though it may be outside the building envelope, it's going to be impacted by grading. So that's another proposed removal. And then tree 8284 is only 2 feet from excavation for the shared driveway access. So I'm also recommending removing that one based on the root impacts that close to a tree. It would not likely survive as far as structurally and health-wise. Now, moving on to the community requested trees for preservation, starting with trees 6560 and 6565. 6560 is in the building envelope for lot 40, and it's also within the grading footprint for that lot. 6566 is also within the grading footprint of lot 40. So both of those are proposed, continue to be proposed for removal. 6571 is within the grading footprint of the open space just to the west of lot 40. So again, we're proposing removal of 6571. 6602 and 6603, I mentioned those were also brought up by the community. We are proposing to retain both of those trees, those boundary line trees. And then 6616, that's a 49-inch western red cedar. There was actually a typo because that tree was originally proposed to be removed in the prior draft of the tree plan, but it is now being retained. So it was mistakenly marked for removal, but that tree will be retained. So 6616 is added to the retention list. 8252 is 4 feet from excavation for the driveway access, and that one is continue to be proposed for removal. Same goes for 8271 is another one that was requested by the city, and I went through, we're removing that because it's in the lot 41 grading footprint. Tree 8320 is within the driveway access footprint, so that's proposed for removal. And then 8339, we looked at that tree again today and determined that we can adjust the driveway access 5 feet to the south. Again, pave the driveway at grade without disturbing the roots. So we are adding that tree to the retention list. That's 8339. And then the last three trees are 9221, which is 2 feet from excavation for right-of-way improvements along Brookman Road. That's too close to be able to preserve a tree of that size. So 9221 is to be removed. 9223 will be impacted. It's in the excavation area for right-of-way improvements. That's another one proposed for removal. And then 9224 is about 1 feet from excavation for right-of-way improvement. And that tree is also proposed to be removed. So that completes kind of my summary of the analysis we had done on each of the trees brought up that we saw in city comments and public comments. And I wanted to end by the Pioneer Design asked me to look at what large trees were and trees of unusual size. Large stature trees, and I looked through the code for my guidance on this. Large stature trees are defined as being over 30-inch DBH, but I couldn't find specific standards in the code for preserving large stature trees specifically. I came to the same conclusion I believe that staff had in their presentation, that it defines large stature trees, but it didn't list out standards for preserving them. Trees of unusual size is, I agree, a discretionary standard. And I noted that for Pioneer Design Group, and also noted that it wasn't defined in the code what a tree of an unusual size is. They asked me for my opinion on what a tree of unusual size is, and you know, it's hard to do. I've actually never been asked that question before, but so I kind of went with my gut, which was trees over 36-inch DBH, and I'm looking at big leaf maple, Douglas fir, and western hemlock. So based on those species, which were brought up in public comments, 36-inch DBH trees I would consider large trees, but they are fairly common in our region. I do see them fairly often on development sites that I work with in the region. When you get to the 48-inch range, I would consider that size more rare, and I would consider it somewhat unusual. I mean, they are somewhat common, but I think it would be fair to call those rare and unusual. I do come across trees of these species in the 50 to 60-inch diameter plus range as well, but at the 48-inch break, that's where I would consider that. But again, those were discretionary standards, and it wasn't real clear to me what basis in the code there was to require preservation of trees of unusual size, since there wasn't definition of those things specifically. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Prager.
Hey, thank you, Todd. You can see that we have taken, I think, pains to make sure that we are retaining as many trees as possible and addressing those concerns. I did just want to note for the record that whilst we have taken pains to demonstrate our compliance with those standards, we appreciate staff's clarification as it relates to the discretionary tree removal standards or tree preservation standards, and we do agree that those standards are not clear and objective. So I did just want to state that for the record. And then just a couple of quick points in response to some of the questions that you had raised, and I'll just show the slide there again with the rendering. We did propose a 20-foot wide trail easement in the adjacent to Redfern Drive on the city's sections for trails that I believe were even submitted to you today. 20 feet, I believe, is the minimum right-of-way width. So we did take the minimum easement width, I should say, and in previous developments, for example, Reserve at Cedar Creek, we have been required to provide a 12-foot wide trail. So we were providing a 12-foot wide trail to be consistent with the trails that we have been conditioned to construct on neighboring developments. We're perfectly willing to consider something more narrow. They are shared trails, I guess, so they typically are wider. But if the city is willing to accept or have us construct a narrower trail section, then we would be willing to do that. And just to address the comment regarding changing floodplain lines, changing vegetated corridor lines, we had initially proposed that the trail on the west side of Cedar Creek would be constructed over the city sewer main that is being constructed in that area. We've done that in other parts of Brookman, and we were going to replicate that here so that there was access for maintenance. During the process, Clean Water Services had indicated that they didn't require, or they wouldn't require, the trail to be constructed over the sewer line, and that they would actually prefer it to be moved outside of the vegetated corridor where possible. And so we did do that, and that resulted in some revisions to the vegetated corridor and some revisions to the impacts in the vegetated corridor. But the floodplain line, the 100-year floodplain line, remained static. But I can see how it could be seen as potentially moving, because there are other moving parts within the plan that have changed location, the trail, property lines, for those lots, etc. There is the small portion of the trail that does cross through the floodplain, and we're providing a balanced cut and fill. So for every cubic yard of fill in the floodplain, there is an offsetting cubic yard of cut within the floodplain. It's only a small area. I believe it's less than 1,000 cubic yards. It might be somewhere in the vicinity of 700 cubic yards, I think. And I think that ends my time. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to respond now.
Okay. I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you.
I had one person who wanted to testify in support. Thank you. Angie Bissett, I believe, wanted to testify in support. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Angie Bissett, last name Bissett.
Thank you.
Address is 8880 Southwest Nimbus Drive, Suite 3, Beaverton, 97208. I'm the realtor that represents Bill and Louise Bissett in the property 16871 Southwest Brookman Road. I am here with a large group, sizable amount of people in support of this passing. These lots have been proposed to be in the city limits. They were put in the city limits and proposed to be developed many years ago. The people in these lots have been waiting to sell their properties. So, I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
I don't. Thank you, ma'am. Can you turn the light back on? And now that I have to read. Dave Sweeney.
By the way,
And Mr. Sweeney, if you want that on the record, you need to say it when you're on a mic.
the trails, it's reserves at Cedar Creek. I have measured myself. They're 9 feet wide, not 12. My name is Dave Sweeney, S-W-E-E-N-E-Y. I live at 24011 Southwest Red Fern Drive. My opening remarks are in the record. I'm going to skip a couple of the paragraphs.
Appreciate that.
But basically, my purpose here tonight is simple. I want to save some of those 80 to 85 old-growth Doug firs from being cut down by the developer. Most of those trees are over 100 feet tall, most over 100 years old. Many of those trees predate the Civil War in 1861. Some predate the Oregon Trail of 1843, and some go back to the presidency of Andrew Jackson in the 1830s. The Cedar Creek development wants to squeeze in two houses And in order to do that, he will remove 80 to 85 very large Doug firs for 2 houses. I must admit here, some of the comments that Mr. Rutledge made I find highly questionable in their interpretation, and some I believe are just flat wrong. For many years now, in many publications, the city of Sherwood has loudly trumpeted its concern for the natural environment. And in 2040 comprehensive plan, it states this about open space. Quote, access to nature is one of the key elements in the unique quality of life in Sherwood, unquote. And in the Sherwood Parks and Rec master plan, it states this about a healthy and valued ecosystem. In 2040, Sherwood is a leader and the steward of its natural environment. Vegetative corridors are protective and weave through the city, providing habitat, safe passage for wildlife, clean water and air, and a place for people to connect with nature. The city actively preserves mature trees and natural areas.
But it does that through its code.
Yes.
Those are subjective standards. The code.
I realize this.
Yeah.
None of this is addressing the code. You have gone over a number of my arguments, and I will get to that. City of Sherwood has been a member of Tree City USA since 2005.
Okay, Mr. Sweeney, I'd
Yes,
ask you to
ma'am.
move on because, like I said, I need to focus on the code.
Okay.
What the city goals aren't approval criteria.
All right. Well, you can read all of that then.
I did get a copy beforehand.
You
I
did.
didn't
All right.
review it.
So you know all of this. Well, I have submitted 10 arguments to you that I believe, and you've addressed a number of them today. As I said, I do not agree with some of the interpretations of Mr. Rutledge. I think he's wrong.
Can you tell me which ones?
Not off the top of my head.
That's okay.
So,
I've
So if
got them
that-
in my notes, and I'll review.
yeah,
all
if
those
that's it,
arguments.
you've got all of mine, and some of my questions have been answered, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening. Cedar Creek Gardens APP, I think it's. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong page. Looking at the top of the page. Emily Teeters. I thought Cedar Creek Gardens sounded very familiar.
Hi,
Hi.
my name's Emily Teeters. T as in Tom, ETERS. My address, do you need my address?
Do you need it on the record?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, 1560 9th Street, Westland, Oregon, 97068. Unfortunately, none of my points have to do with the codes. It's simply a bit of an emotional plea. My grandparents are Ruth and Byron Gregory, these two right back here. They live at the outside of the proposed lot on Brookman Road, where
They're the property to the east of this site?
correct,
Okay.
where it has been frequently referred to as the area that will eventually be developed. While a developer sees value in houses being built regardless of environmental impact, I believe there's a value in a city maintaining a rural element of leaving some things untouched, and mostly there is value and almost an obligation in honoring its existing citizens and upholding their quality of life. My grandparents have been citizens of Sherwood for 45 years, and I think there is something to say about, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional about it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Take your time. Take your
Yeah,
time.
take your time. And if you want, you can come back too. If
No,
that's easier.
I'd rather
Yeah, that's
just
okay.
say it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
My family has grown up here, and to see it being referred to so flippantly is hard. And yes, you made a point of this is a realization, and I recognize that it doesn't make it any easier. And that's just my plea, I guess, is that for the citizens who have lived here, for Dave and Neil, who have been here for over 20 years, and my grandparents for 45 years, they built their property that they live on now. And I think there is something that the city owes them to have their quality of life be respected. And this development completely impacts them on every level.
Thank you, Ms.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Shannon? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Neil Shannon, and I reside at 23997 Southwest Redfern Drive. I rise in opposition to this subdevelopment, or to be more specific, I am in opposition of less than 5% of this subdivision. Specifically, I am in opposition to the proposal to create lots 40 and 41, as it is just too much damage to the natural habitat of the area, disruptive to existing neighborhoods, creates serious traffic hazards, and establishes a fractured neighborhood. With only 4 minutes allowed for testimony, I'd like to limit my comments to the hazards created by the proposed private driveway at the northeast corner of the site connecting to Brookman Road. However, I do request that the record remain open so that I may have the opportunity to address other issues after listening to the various presentations. I have reviewed the PDG requested design modification for the TIA study intersection 5, the request to allow a private driveway access to Brookman Road from Lot 41. It is my understanding that while Washington County has indicated preliminary approval for the driveway access, such approval is challengeable as part of this Type 2 procedure. Naomi Vogel, Associate Planner with the Washington County, in her letter of June 30th, confirms that the design exception in compliance with is required to be in compliance of Section 220 of the road standards and Section 501-8.5 of the County Development Code will be required. Section 220.020.1 B of the road standards allows for a design exception when topography, right-of-way, or other geographic conditions impose economic hardship on the applicant and an equivalent alternative is available that can accomplish the same design objective. The key point here is an equivalent alternative. I do not believe that adding a driveway to a major arterial road is an equivalent alternative. In addition, Section 501.8.B.4 notes that exceptions for local streets and private accesses may be allowed through a Type 2 process when the collector access is found to be unavailable and impractical by the director, and shall also comply with the additional access standards A through C. The additional access standards noted above include a requirement that direct access to an arterial will be permitted provided that point A of such access is more than 600 feet from any intersection, point A, or other access to that minor arterial, point C. There are already 2 private driveways, point C, with direct access to Brookman Road, and this additional access fails to meet the requirements as it will be directly adjacent to one driveway and 300 feet from a second. The code does have provisions for exceptions to the access criteria, 501.8.C, with the use of an access management plan. Should the proposal for the private driveway go through, I request that a condition be included in the requirement for an access management plan. PNG notes in their application that the City of Sherwood, in 2020 addendum to the Brookman Addition Concept Plan, is recommending a revised alignment that would revert this portion of Brookman Road to a local street. As such, the application goes on to note no design modification would be required. At that time, access to Brookman Road could be allowed and construction could proceed unimpaired. One sentence. I request that this Type 2 design modification for the TIA study intersection 5 be denied.
Okay. Are you going to submit that? You've got a lot of thank you. You had a lot of citations, and I wasn't able to follow. I followed your argument. I just want to be able to track your specifics. Thank you, sir. Sorry, I can't decipher the first name. It looks like Gregory is the last name. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for listening to us. We're the emotional grandparents. My name is Ruth Ann Gregory, Gregory, 16457 Southwest Brookman Road, Sherwood 97140 is our address. And as previously mentioned, our granddaughter brought up to you that we purchased the property directly south of the adjacent land, or that flag lot, 45 years ago. When we purchased that property, the owner at that particular time owned property also to the west of us, a lot, which needed to have access because of some flooding problems if they went around the curve and entered on a different Brookman Road access. So he requested that we move our property line 50 feet to the south to accommodate for an access road.
So
And
that
we agreed.
flagpole, that's how that flag,
I beg your pardon?
that's how that flag lot along the north boundary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so, of course, we agreed to that. So we were surprised and sad when we heard that the area is actually being planned is 60 feet, not 50 feet. That 10 extra feet actually allows the builder to put 2 homes on that narrow strip of land. It also, unfortunately, will remove many big trees, as been brought to your attention already. And while it does provide the builder 2 homes to build there, it denies the people who live around this area clean air to breathe, shade from the trees, places for animals to live. Aesthetically, the things that make life pleasurable and safe. So we just wanted to voice our concern for the trees that are being removed there and ask that it be reconsidered to be left in a natural state.
Thank you, ma'am.
We bought, like
Can
she
I get
said-
your name, sir?
Oh, Byron Gregory.
Thank you.
Same address.
Yep.
Okay. 45 years. We bought the property, and it was 10 acres when we bought it. And then the fellow that had owned it before asked us, like my wife said, to move the boundaries. We didn't have it surveyed because we didn't think it was necessary at the time when we didn't have a lot of money. But now they're saying it's 60 feet, and they had 2 other surveys showed it 50 feet. And we have a floodplain on our property, and if they put houses on there, that flood goes through that area. And in the wintertime, we have the water coming off of Ladd Hill Road into our property, and it floods. And there's quite a bit of water that stands for several months in the wintertime along that where they're going to put a driveway. So I don't know what they'll do with the water. But anyway, we like to protect our property, and we think that the people that are trying to make money off of this have no concern for what it's costing other people. Anyway, I disagree with their property line, and we have no recourse. We can't sue them, but we don't agree with that property
Well, you
line.
can. I think that's your recourse. I don't have the jurisdiction to review the survey.
Yeah,
So if you dispute the survey, that's the only recourse, really.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Have a good evening. Madeline Robinette.
I'm Madeline Robinette, Robinette, and my address is 17601 Southwest Fitch in Sherwood, 97140. I just want to say about the Gregorys, I was really shocked to see that their property that they live on has been platted, and I was just...
It's not platted, it's a conceptual plan that the applicant's saying, this is how it could develop.
It just makes it feel like they're not living there, and I feel sad about that, so I'm sorry. That's kind of offensive to me. I labeled this picture The labels didn't come out, but thanks for printing them. When I was back in the Redfern area, I saw some trees that look very much like culturally modified trees, which are trees that Native Americans used for trail markers and such. And I just wanted to make sure those trees are protected. They're near the Redfern area. And I'm also much opposed to taking down 80 trees for 2 homes. The other development, it looks beautiful, it looks great, but I just don't understand ruining that much forest for 2 homes and a driveway. I will give you the labeled picture.
Thank you.
I have also a picture of a tree that was marked and inventoried by the Washington State Archaeologist as a modified tree, so you kind of know what they look like.
That's not here.
Not here, and
Yeah,
it's
that's what I
labeled as
thought. I
one
saw
that-
your letter, and
Yeah.
Thank
so,
you.
Just so you know.
and that's the marked copies. Yeah, go ahead and give them to staff, but I'll make sure I get the markings.
I just want to clarify, is that in addition to the email?
Yes, I just
That
want
one?
a comparison one
Okay.
to go with
Thanks.
And just for the record, she said she wanted a comparison one to go with the email,
Yep.
because you're not on the mic. Ruth Ann Gregory? Oh, yeah. Used 2 different pages, thank you. I knew I recognized the name, but I thought it was another relative. Cynthia Randall?
Hi there, Cynthia Randall, Randall. Address is 23864 Southwest Shady Grove Drive. I back up to that strip that we've talked about. So that is mostly my concern, but it's only a part of it. I wanted to say that for the realtor who said that these people have been waiting for years to sell their properties, it's not that we are blanketly opposed to any development going in. We know that's just kind of the way things tend to go. It's inevitable to some degree. It is the strip of trees that a lot of us are concerned about. It is the basically taking away this 50-yard strip that they did not know was going to be attached to a concept plan, taking that away from residents. It's about the livability of our city, its beauty, its natural habitat, and I believe that this proposal is not in alignment with the tree preservation that the city has maintained as a priority. Just a few quick little points. This floodplain that's on the other side, since we back up to that 50-foot strip, the way our neighborhood is graded, or just the way it works, the backyard of ours, the very bottom of our yard, is already soggy 2/3 of the year. It comes from our neighbor's yard. It comes from all directions, it feels like, and it drains, thankfully, down into probably what is that 50-foot strip. So it's soggy, but it's passable. I can only imagine if it's paved where that water's going to go. We're just going to end up with a swimming pool at the bottom of our yard. And another point, they're all little random ones, but taking down the trees and paving and grading for this so-called driveway, unless I was having trouble following what tree numbers were what. But my understanding is that there is a tree on a neighbor's lot that is in their property line that is affected, and unless that is one of the ones that is no longer being slated for removal, it seemed odd to me. And the only thing we could think of is, well, if you have a lone tree, maybe it's more subject to wind, storms, and all that. But that's their tree, so maybe...
Yeah, the applicant has no right to enter anybody else's property. So if there's a dispute that the tree is on somebody else's property, that's, again, a civil issue.
Correct, but if a bunch of removal of trees is then leaving that, if they, okay, well,
So you're
we'll
concerned
leave your
about the
tree.
wind impact?
Absolutely. We actually used to have several trees on our property. Over the years, they got sick. I've lived there for now 25 years, actually. And we had a number of trees over time. Some of them got sick. We had to have them taken down. Unfortunately, one healthy one was taken down by the contractor making a mistake. So we were left with one good tree in our backyard, which we then basically, an arborist told us that needs to come down because we were afraid it was going to land on our roof. So that was probably their concern. Okay, maybe that one tree gets to stay, but now it's subject to possible windstorms and damage to their home. So that doesn't seem right to me. I've been dismayed by a lot of comments tonight, and I certainly I'm not in your position by any means, but a lot of, well, that's too vague. Well, we kind of, we don't really know how to define that. There's a lot of that going on, and I feel like that is at the expense of the issues that people are raising of concern.
And I can address that question, or that comment. The city adopted its code, and it has somewhat subjective standards, but those could be applied. But state law changed, and they said any application for residential development has to have clear and objective standards. They cannot be subjective. If they are subjective, the city is prohibited from enforcing them or applying them. So
Okay.
it came in after. It's a change. A lot of jurisdictions in Oregon are having the same issue,
Sure.
things that used to apply.
Well, and I have to say that a lot of that is because of this housing shortage. What I question, and this is just me off the top of my head, not super educated on the numbers, but is the housing shortage going to be the people that are having difficulty with housing now? Is it going to be solved by this development, or is the price point of these homes going to solve that problem?
And that, again, is not something
Right.
that I
But
can
I feel like that as an argument seems questionable to me, because I don't see that the price point, if you look at the price point of the homes going in right now off of Brickman, that's not solving the housing problem that a lot of people are facing. And so just really quick then, they're boasting 0.33 miles of walking trails. I'm like, 0.33 seems like nothing to me. And you can't liken a sidewalk to a walking trail, in my opinion. The driveway left turn line of sight is scary to me. I can see accidents happening there all the time with cars that not seeing the oncoming cars, or a car waiting to turn left and somebody slamming into the back of them. I just feel that that's been scary to me. I'd be afraid to be in a house in front of that and have a car push.
I just don't want. I wanted to get to your other points. I did interrupt you, but I want to get
Right. So that's why I'm speeding through.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So basically, I just wanted to say that also those two homes are significantly removed from the rest of their neighborhood. So to me, all of this, the safety disregard, the tree removal, is just about two homes. If it's about money, when we bought our lot, we paid a premium for that lot to have the trees behind us. I can't imagine other people would not be willing to do that as well. Finally, my very last thing was the habitat. There have been people posting on our neighborhood page owls, people sitting on fences.
Yeah, I
It's
saw those
amazing.
pictures.
The other thing is coyotes. Now, I'm not a fan. I've got cats that I now keep inside because of it, but those coyotes are also being displaced at a significant proportion. They used to be, you could hear them a little. Now you hear them all the time. We hear them running down the street. My husband and I were walking our dog on the one little path behind Redfern recently. We were heading from Sunset toward where this development is.
I'm sorry, but I need you to wrap it up.
Okay. They were loud and they were close to the point where we turned around and hightailed it the other
That's
direction.
happening everywhere.
So the more of this, the more of that is what I'm saying.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Dang, mask makes my glasses fog up. Kyle Grant.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Grant. I live at 23837 Southwest Redfern Drive. And I've submitted written testimony, which I assume you've received. And I'm here on behalf of the Arbor Lane Homeowners Association. I'm currently serving on the board of directors for the association, and our written testimony and my comments here are just trying to encompass broadly the collective concerns of the community. Arbor Lane consists of, I can't remember off the top of my head, about 114 lots on Redfern, Shady Grove, and the surrounding area. Most of, I'd say most of the concerns that we raised in our written testimony to some extent have been addressed, and we appreciate the applicant addressing those concerns. We would still request that the record remain open, mostly because of the memo that was referenced by the arborist. I think we would like to have an opportunity to review that and then respond accordingly within the time frame allowed. One argument that we would like to preserve for the record on appeal concerns one section of the code. this is in section 16.142.070.d.1. I hope that's the correct section, but the language is that trees may be considered for removal as part of a land use application to, quote, accommodate the development, including buildings, parking, walkways, grading, etc. The area of concern is the open space tract I, which is located in the
Redfern?
Yeah, it's directly adjacent to Redfern, directly south of Redfern in the flagpole portion of the lot. The preliminary plat identifies it as open space, and I guess this is more a question, but officially we want to preserve the argument for appeal. But the question I would raise is, if this is designated as open space, why are trees being removed from this area? If it's left as open space, it would stand to reason that this area, removal of those trees is not necessary for buildings, parking, walkways, grading, etc. A suggestion was made by the applicant's representative to narrow the path that is proposed in this area. I think I speak for the association to say we would be in support of that to the extent that it preserves any trees in that tract I open space to the maximum extent possible. So we would appreciate a response if the applicant would like to offer a rebuttal on that point as to why these trees need to be removed in light of that portion of the city code. We would appreciate that response. I think the other concerns, as I said, were addressed or otherwise raised by other members of the public. So those are our comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Before you leave, since you're representing the homeowners association who raised the issue with the your neighborhood association, where's that tract that was referenced? Do you know offhand? If you don't, that's fine.
You're talking about the tract A open space.
Yeah, I think
right?
so, yeah.
That is actually,
Can we pull up the map again?
Yeah, if you have it up in front of you.
Staff can. Yeah, if you want to just point at that even.
Yeah.
If you want to say anything, I'll just translate, but if you can just point, that'll get me there.
Yeah. So tract A, Redfern. Tract A kind of has its own skinny portion that runs east to west.
So it's basically along the northern edge of that flagpole portion of the site.
And then it opens up into the green space.
Okay, I could see that from the aerial photo. I figured that's what it was. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
Nope, that was the only one. I just want to write that down real quick before I forget. Okay, now we're going to go to online witnesses. Jim Rose with Sherwood School District.
No,
I'm in written. Sorry. First, Renee Mangus. I didn't think I'd seen that on there before. And Ms. Mangus, if you're with us,
And do we have a phone number that
Yes,
we can unmute? So Renee, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead.
503-789-9501.
And then Mark 9501, unmute if we can.
And staff's going to unmute you, and we'll let you know when we start hearing you. And I'm waiting for a signal from staff that you're unmuted.
Hello?
Hello, I think we hear you.
Excellent. Actually, my name is DJ Mangus. I am Renee Mangus'
Mr. Mangus,
husband.
can you speak up? Or just a moment. I'm going to ask staff if we can turn up the volume. You're coming through the
Sounds
speaker in
good.
the ceiling. Give us just a second. Okay, try it again.
All right, you hearing me well?
Yes, that definitely helped, but now I'm really loud, so I'll try not to talk too much.
I'm not too concerned. Okay, so...
Can I get your name again?
My name is Donnie Mangus. I'm Renee
Don,
Mangus'
D-O-N?
husband. D-O-N-N-I-E.
Thank you.
And I reside on Brookman Road. We have a letter that was placed into the record, and most of our concerns were actually addressed. The only additional thing I would like to make sure is brought to your attention is in these, what is it, staff comments? The document that was prepared, that Eric had prepared before.
The staff
which
report?
actually went through. Yes, that one. Thank you very much.
No problem.
One of the things on the driveway I wanted to make sure got addressed, because I didn't see it in the presentation, was sight lines at the end of that driveway.
Yes, that was.
I want to make sure.
That was in your written testimony, I believe, and I understand the issue there.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that that was brought to your attention, and if that's the case, then I don't think I have anything more to add that is not in our written.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. It's the east end of the driveway access where it intersects into Brookwood, correct? At the northeast corner.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Kelsey Whitber, 5073 is the last of the number. Do we need to unmute individually, or is everybody unmuted?
Everyone is unmuted.
Okay. Ms. Whitber, you should be unmuted. If you'll say something, we're not hearing you yet. You may need to unmute yourself by hitting *9 on your phone. And Ms. Whitber, we're not hearing you. Can we confirm that she's still online? Does it appear on the screen?
Do you have the phone number for it?
Yeah.
What's the last four?
5073. Okay. Ms. Whitber may have left. Don Marthaler?
Don Marthaler here.
Great, we can hear you. Thank you, sir. Can we get your address?
Okay, you may. So it's Don Marthaler, Marthaller, Post Office Box 1978 in Gresham, Oregon. And I'm a real estate consultant with Property House, Inc. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Wayne Chronister. And just to give you a little background, I began my land use planning career 47 years ago as the city planner of Gresham.
Oh, wow.
And
can I get your client's last name? Can you spell your client's last name?
Chronister, Chronister. They own tax lot 107, which is 9.92 acres. The lots 1 through 8. There's another lot, and there's also lot 40 and 41 that are being discussed tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, gosh, I met Mr. and Mrs. Chronister 5.5 years ago, and the development continues. And I just want to say that the emotion about this, it's not easy. I'm an old farm boy in Gresham, and I watched it all happen too, so I completely understand. But the Chronisters, they purchased this beautiful 9.92 acres just, at that time outskirts of the city, and that was 1989, 33 years ago, and they came here and they raised their 7 children in this country life, that we've become accustomed to there. So, it wasn't their vision to see this area of planned growth, begin, but it did, and it did. And so it's sad, but it happens. But, this Brookman study area began years ago, and earlier mentioned, this about 13 years ago, the Brookman study area, I think that final report was about May 2009. And, they didn't have any interest in selling, but as this development pressure continued to occur, not much gets talked about this Brookman sanitary sewer trunk line, but it was devastating. I recall when I first met the Cronisters and I drove up to their house, which would be at about lots 2 and 3 on the plat there. And deer walking around coming out of Cedar Creek. It was absolutely beautiful. And when this Brookman sanitary sewer trunk discussion started taking place, I mean, if you go there now, you know, they took out a lot of trees, you know, and the Cronisters were very emotional. You know, they didn't want to leave. They didn't want to move, but this progress kept moving, and it got caught. You know, there's a need. People don't realize it, but when you put a sewer line through a piece of property, you know, you need an easement. And if you don't agree to what's offered to you, which in this case wasn't a lot of money, or you go through condemnation and you go through years of litigation and you know, through a jury process of which I've done appraisals for all of Airport Way to the city of Airport, so I've had some experience there. But you know, you don't want to get caught up in that. And we tried to work with the city and make, you know, just move forward. And the Cronisters aren't getting a lot of lots out of this deal. I mean, you got maybe, what, 11, 12 lots on the Cronisters tax lot 107. So, you know, it's important to them to get that lot 40 and 41, but the Cronisters have given up a lot, you know, to have raised 7 kids there and to lived in that beautiful neighborhood. And, you know, they've given up the sanitary sewer line easement. They had the vegetative corridors, the wetlands, trees, and the thing is, I really have to commend the applicant, Westwood Homes, and his group of people. I mean,
Okay, Mr. Martell, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up because your time is gone.
I'm on my.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm on my ending. I'm on my close.
Go ahead.
And they love Sherwood, and they're giving back to the community and the generations to come by allowing Westwood to create something. I mean, you know, it's going to look rough till it's built, but when it's done, and you got these trails and your children and your grandchildren are riding their bikes down there, it's going to be a, you know, Redfern, you're going to have a bunch of great neighbors. And I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marthaler. We're going to take a short break because I had too much coffee before this hearing. So we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. And we'll proceed with the applicant or staff and then the applicant's response. There's a couple of people have stepped out. I just want to make sure everybody gets back before we restart. Did we have an answer to the 120-day clock?
Yeah, it's October 18th.
October 18th? Thanks.
10/18/22. Yeah, so there's actually a typo in the staff report. It's since we didn't capture one of the continuances and extension, so staff report says September 14th, but it's actually 10/18.
Thought I had seen something about it.
Yeah, a lot of changes. So 10/18.
I think everybody's back. Staff noted that the applicant used up their time, but I'm going to give you the chance to rebut it, keep it short, because I know the public wants to hear some answers to some of the questions that were raised. So.
Yeah, and I just was coming up just to talk about the extension to start. If I know that we provided the continuance and we provided an extension based on that continuance. I don't recall when it was, but I'm sure we'd be happy to provide an additional extension if you need one based on the open record periods.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate. What I'm predisposed to do is hold it open for a total of 3 weeks. 1 week for everybody to submit new evidence and testimony. 1 week for everybody to respond to that new evidence and testimony. And then 1 week for the applicant's final argument, which is required by state law. So if the applicant's willing to extend the 120-day clock for 3 weeks, that would be appropriate, consistent with that schedule.
Yeah, if you just want us to extend it by 3 weeks, we can find out the exact date from staff, or if you want to give us a date, then that would work too.
Put my calendar real quick.
Yeah, 10/18 plus 3 weeks.
Oops. 18, so 25 is first. This is November 8th?
Yeah, November 8th.
Okay.
Okay. Did you want us to put that in writing? Or?
Yes, after the hearing.
Correct.
What did I just say? November 8th?
November 8th.
Thank you.
So I appreciate...
November.
Okay.
I appreciate the
Are
opportunity.
you sure you mean November?
Yes, November 8th. This is how long. It currently ends October 18th, and for 3 weeks after that is November 8th.
So this is not a decision, well, it's the local decision deadline, but, this is the time that's needed for a potential appeal. It's the time that's needed for Joe to process his decision, us to issue a decision, and then potentially to receive an appeal and go to a city council or a planning commission on appeal. So that's why it's a November date. It's capturing the appeal period as well.
So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to in rebuttal. I am going to be brief, but you're right. I think that there are some things that I did want to respond to so that people can hear them tonight rather than have to wait till they're in writing, etc. And so I guess I'll start with as far as the open space tract I. So open space has a lot of different meanings. Open space is vegetated corridor. Open space is also public parks, for example. And if you look back on the concept plan, there is a park area designated for that western portion of the flagpole piece. So that tract I is part of that park. We have the community trail that runs through it, and on the east side of the community trail, it's at the terminus of Redfern, which is where there is sewer extension, grading for the trail, etc. So there are trees being removed from that portion of the site associated with that. Just before he had to leave, I was talking with Mr. Prager, and we identified that with the retention of trees, I believe 6602 and 6603, which are boundary trees, there is only one other tree that's being removed from the west side of the community trail. and that tree is being removed because it has been assessed as being dead by Mr. Prager. So that's obviously being removed for practical and safety reasons. Other than that, there are no trees being removed from that open space tract on the west side of the community trail. And again, on the east side, it's at the terminus of the Redfern right-of-way, which we're extending a city sewer line south and east, I believe, through that area, and also grading associated with the trail. Speaking of the trail, as I mentioned, we would be happy to reduce the size of the trail. I guess the difficulty is at this point we're unsure, uncertain of what specific section or design the city would require. So we're otherwise we would submit a reduced trail plan and look at the tree removal around that or to the east of the trail, but we're without a definitive number from the city as to what they want in terms of the width of the easement and the width of the trail. We would have to do that through conditions of approval, if that makes sense. So, check my points. And just again to reiterate that the driveway has been relocated 5 feet south, and if you look at the plan, you can see that the vegetated corridor alignment kind of has a little elephant foot at the terminus of the street of the driveway, which allows us to make that move 5 feet to the south.
I'm sorry, you lost me there.
So
Can we pull up the plan again on the screen?
Also up there.
Yeah, but it's not as easy for me to see, and I assume the neighbors do. And I skipped over staff, so I will come back to you, and then we'll give Mr. Hasten the final.
Sorry, that's my fault. I jumped into the extension.
Okay.
I think this is staff, IT. Can we get the PowerPoint back up? That's plugged in.
So the driveway we're talking about is the one on the flagpole at Brookwood.
And if you're looking at the plan on the very eastern end, on the southern portion of that, okay,
I got it.
Yeah. So that actually does move that driveway a little bit further to the south, only 5 feet, but it does create a little bit of an additional separation. We retain tree 8339, and I know the neighbors had submitted concerns that the driveways were going to be in pretty close proximity, so that does provide additional spacing at that location. And then finally, I was just going to end with, in terms of land use approvals and the land use authority, the city of Sherwood is the land use authority for this application, the road authority being Washington County. We have gone through the required process of the city and of the county for these types of applications and received a response from the city. I would point out that the Community Development Code, the Washington County Community Development Code, if the county were the land use authority, does contain provisions that state that land divisions or applications cannot be denied simply because they don't meet the access spacing standards of the Washington County Code. Now, as I mentioned, the county is not the land use authority, they're only the road controlling authority in this case, but were they the land use authority and were land use applications submitted to them as part of this application, they do, as I mentioned, have provisions in Article 5 which would allow approval of an application that doesn't meet the access spacing standards, or would actually more correctly prohibit its denial simply for failure to meet that access spacing standard.
Question I was going to ask staff, and I'll give you a shot too, is do I have jurisdiction over the county's decision of those road, whatever, not modification, but adjustments?
And that's not one that I had considered previously, so I'll have to leave that one for written response.
One of the neighbors wanted to address that, and I'm not clear that I have jurisdiction. Does staff have a response to that?
I've talked to the county about this, and In the verbal discussions with the associate planner there, they do believe that you have the authority to weigh in on their approval. And I should say, again, that came from an associate planner, not a manager or director, so, and it was on a phone call.
If you want to, does the city have anything else you want to add? And also, during the open record, if you can give me some authority for how I have jurisdiction and what the specific criteria are in the CDC that I would be reviewing as part of that, so that I can...
Yeah, and I would say my comments about the associate planner's comments, again, verbal comments. I just want to make that very clear. I don't know that that certainly was not a formal statement from them, but that's just in the discussion. But yeah, we can clarify that for you in the open record period. Just generally speaking, how the city sees it, though, is that this is a county decision. You know, we don't, city doesn't generally weigh in on these things. In terms of, you know, access, especially, it generally is their standards that apply, and the city doesn't weigh in.
And I would question how I would, if the county hasn't even made a final decision yet, how I could review that decision. So, just some issues that I'm thinking about, we'll have to address. And the more information I have, the better. Is that it from the city then?
No, I got a lot more for you. You ready?
Yeah.
So, I know most people have left, but I just want to acknowledge that the tree removal and development, you know, obviously an emotional topic. Again, the city staff report and recommendation is based, you know, solely on the code. Even if we love trees ourselves, you know, our role on this matter is to look at the code and look at the proposal and make a determination on whether or not the code has been satisfied given the proposal. And we have to kind of keep our other opinions and emotion out of it. So I just want to make that clear. And then in response to some of the disagreements that we've heard from the public about the city's analysis on the tree code, you know, we agree that trees are incredibly important in Sherwood. They make Sherwood what it is. But again, we have to go back to the code. I just want to clarify that we did have legal counsel review the staff report, and in particular, the tree code and whether or not additional trees could be protected. And we don't have anything in writing from legal counsel, but I just want to clarify that they reviewed the staff report and sort of provided guidance on that issue. So it has been reviewed by the city's legal counsel. I also want to clarify, as you mentioned, Joe, that tree removal on an adjacent or an off-site property is just not permitted. And so I want to clarify that the city is not approving removal of trees that are not on this property or that the applicant doesn't have the authority to remove. And we do have a condition of approval that is related to the tree preservation and removal, and the last sentence in there is that the applicant is required to obtain approval for any off-site trees prior to removal. And so even if these trees are shown for removal, if they turn out to be on a shared property line, off-site, or another party having ownership of them, the applicant cannot remove those trees without permission. I want to be very clear on that. Even if the plans show removal. That's the way the condition is written. On the trail, we need a minimum of a 12-foot easement for utilities. I think that's the other thing that gets a little bit lost in all this discussion, is that there are utilities proposed, or at least an easement for utilities to go under that either now or in the future. Sounds like the applicant and staff are doing a dance on exactly what that trail needs to look like. If you need us to provide a number, we can.
That would be great.
I would, sure. So the way I think that would work is staff would provide the number of the pavement width and the easement width, and then the applicant can respond to that with as much tree protection as possible, if any. So we'll try and get that out as early as possible. We heard about some concern from the Gregory family. I just wanted to acknowledge, them and how long they've been here. The 50 feet versus the 60 feet, obviously they were working with the owner, the adjacent owner at that time, like good neighbors. We understand that now, the city, at least in this land use application, has determined that the width of the flagpole is 60 feet. That's just based on the evidence in the record. And I don't know what happened 45 years ago. If there was something that happened, where they lost 10 feet, it's just what we have to do now is look at the evidence in the record, and we're looking at the surveys that have been recorded, and those very clearly show that the width, and I should say that those surveys are based on the legal description of the Chronister property, and those surveys show 60 feet. We heard some concern about a conceptual plat being shown on the Gregory property. That is a requirement of the land use submittal. And even though it might be a little counterintuitive right now, at this point it is intended to actually protect that property owner. The issue is that if we don't get called a shadow plat to really see how that development could be extended into that property, I know it's a concerning map to see, but if we didn't do that, the city would not have the ability to make sure that development actually could occur on that property. And if some point they do want to sell, but the neighboring development has left them, without any developable property based on the road alignment or whatever it is, that would be a very bad situation for them in the future, or the future owner when they look to sell and develop. And to clarify further, when we say for future development, that statement is based on the property being in the urban growth boundary and also having, a future designation applied to it, which in this case is residential development. So the concept plan did not propose open space, it did not propose park, it did not propose anything else but residential development. And so the city is legally obligated to ensure that development can occur on that property. If we did anything else, we would not be doing our job. So we have to look at the future plan for development offsite. It does not mean that they will ever sell or develop, but we have to provide an opportunity for that based on the zoning. Lastly, I'll just say that I understand all of the concern, mainly about the tree removal, and lots 40 and 41, the driveway, and the sort of whole nature of that area. Staff has been aware of the concerns from the neighborhood for a while. We took a very close look at the code and the proposal, 127-page staff report, including detailed findings on lots 40 and 41. If we did not think it met the code, we would have stated that and would have not recommended approval of those lots. So I just want to clarify that staff has looked at all of the issues that were raised, and we didn't see anything that would prohibit us approving development on those two lots, despite the concern. So, but I do want to acknowledge the concern, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Mr. Hayes, anything in response to that?
I just really quickly, I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any concerns that we had plans to just blindly access other people's property for tree removal. It's kind of a catch-22 situation where we, with those boundary trees, we're aware that we need to obtain approval from a neighboring property owner if they were to be removed. But in order to have land use approval to remove them, should that approval be granted from the neighboring property owner, we do need to show them as being removed. So certainly there are laws outside of the code requirements that would protect those trees from trespass, for example. So with that, I'll also just mention that we do appreciate the comments and concerns. We have listened to them and adjusted to the extent that we can the proposal to accommodate some of the requests that we've heard. We will be providing an additional or revised tree removal or tree retention plan to capture those changes that we've discussed tonight and that Mr. Prager mentioned earlier, the retention of the 4 additional trees and the correction of the tree that was marked for removal, which was actually supposed to be on the retention list. So we will provide that as part of the open record period. But with that, unless you have any other questions, we'll reserve further comment to the open record.
I'm going to get my calendar out, give us some specific dates, but like I said, I'm going to hold it open for 3 weeks. I'll hold it open until August 10th for anybody to submit additional written testimony and evidence. And I'll hold it open until August 17th for anybody to respond to whatever was submitted during the first week. So the second week is just responses to whatever was submitted during the first week. And then the 24th of August for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. What time does anything have to be submitted, received by the city?
5 p.m.
Okay, so anything anybody wants to submit has to be physically received by the city by 5 p.m. You can send it to Mr. Rutledge, either email, hand deliver, mail, but if it goes by mail, it has to be received by 5 on the relevant date. So August 10th is the first period, 5 o'clock. August 17th is the second period. August 24th is the final argument, and then I have a calendar shut. Hang on. So I will get my decision out by September 7th at the latest, I hope. I'm almost sure. I will get it out as close to September 7th as I can. I will send my decision to the city. The city will send it to parties of record. So if you've testified orally or in writing, or you do during the open record, you'll be sure and get a copy of my decision when it's issued. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.